Breaking news. DNA testing proved the death of Prigozhin in the crash of his plane. 10 people were killed in a plane crash in Russia last week, and the investigative committee says they have confirmed that Wagner Group head Yevgeny Prigozhin was one of them. The future of the group is uncertain, despite President Vladimir Putin's order for Wagner soldiers to swear allegiance to Russia. Wagner mercenary group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin was killed in a plane crash, according to Russia's investigative committee. Svetlana Petrenko, a committee spokeswoman, said that DNA tests were used to verify the identities of those on board the Wagner Group private jet that went down on August 24. Molecular genetic analyses were completed as part of the probe into the Tver area plane crash. Their findings confirmed the identities of all 10 victims, matching those on the flight manifest. The statement provided no information about possible causes of the accident. 2 months to the day after Mr. Prigozhin led an unsuccessful mutiny against Russia's army top brass, the private jet he was flying in crashed. Putin called the uprising a treasonous stab in the back, but he later met with Prigozhin in the Kremlin. On Thursday, he extended his condolences to the crash victims' loved ones. Meanwhile, after Mr. Prigozhin's death was confirmed, spontaneous memorials sprung up all over Russia. To honor the memory of Mr. Prigozhin and his second-in-command at the Wagner Group, Dmitry Utkin, Muscovites have left flowers at a makeshift shrine decorated with Russian flags and photographs set up a short distance from the Kremlin. Wagner Group apologist and shrine visitor Konstantin Makiev was there. He doesn't think Wagner's career is over just yet. The Wagner Group will undoubtedly identify Prigozhin's replacement, in my opinion. I believe Yevgeny Prigozhin planned for this eventuality, and he unquestionably has a successor in mind. And I have faith that the Wagner Group won't abandon its principles. The chess player Dmitry Karpov is another fan of Wagner's. Mr. Prigozhin, he says, set a good example for everyone. Prigozhin set the standard for what is and is not acceptable practice. Of course, many superiors find it instructive to see someone go to the front lines with a flag in his hands as an example of proper procedure. Time is the only reliable judge of the sincerity of his emotional outbursts and the severity of his orders to his subordinates. In this case, I would not apply my own personal judgment to the events. But I would argue that such figures serve as examples throughout history. Even Alexander Dykov, who was also present, considers Prigozhin and Utkin to be among Russia's greatest heroes. My guess is that in the end, only the image of a hero will be remembered, and not the discussions about Prigozhin's mistakes and differing evaluations of his actions. And a representation of the stalwarts he had gathered to protect him. He and Dmitry Utkin are the true heroes, and no one else in the world, much less Russia, has such a reputation for bravery at the moment. Wagner soldiers are now required by order of President Putin to swear an oath of allegiance to the Russian Federation. After the Kremlin denied Western claims that Mr. Prigozhin had been killed on Kremlin orders, he signed a decree making the change effective immediately. Dr. Matthew Sussex is a visiting fellow at the Strategic and Defence Studies Centre and the Asia Institute at the Australian National University. Putin has essentially requested that Wagner troops pledge allegiance to Russia, the Russian Constitution, and the Russian armed forces. And that last part is probably the most crucial, since Wagner's previous code of honor stated that it should always defend Russian interests overseas. However, it did not take an oath of allegiance to the armed forces, which I believe contributed to the tense atmosphere. Mr. Sussex doubts that the Wagner Group has officially disbanded. Wagner has continued its operations in several countries despite the loss of Mr. Prigozhin and Mr. Utkin. So far as we can tell, Wagner's extensive involvement in Mali has not disrupted government operations there. They continue to do business with the Russian government, which, ironically, is what Wagner was when it came to dealing with African countries in particular. Therefore, it is possible that Wagner is taken over by a new management team or even by a different Russian private military company. In addition, scores of Russian mercenary firms exist. There seems to be a proliferation of private military companies in Russia. Sometimes these elite groups are formed to protect lone individuals. They can sometimes be larger than that and take on roles akin to combat. And some of them have ties to very large corporations. As one concrete illustration, the major energy firm Gazprom operates a number of private military firms, some of which are stationed in Ukraine. There are also a plethora of others, some of which were developed by the armed forces. There have been as many as 38 new ones in the past few months, with some of them originating in Crimea. How the Russian government maintains order in a country where so many people are heavily armed is a legitimate concern.